The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of St. Mary's Church as William adjusted his black tie for the 10th time. His hands trembled slightly as he looked at himself in the small mirror of the church basement room. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. He was marrying Sarah, the woman he had loved for 3 years. But something heavy sat in his chest like a stone. Outside the room, he could hear people arriving. Car doors slammed in the parking lot. Voices grew louder as more family and friends filled the wooden pews. His mother had been crying happy tears all morning. His father kept patting his shoulder and saying how proud he was. But William felt like he was drowning in a secret that grew bigger every hour. The church looked beautiful. White roses decorated every pew. Candles flickered along the altar. Sarah's family had worked for weeks to make everything perfect. Her mother had sewn small pearls onto the church runner by hand. Her father had polished every brass fixture until it gleamed. Everything was ready for a fairy tale wedding. William reached into his jacket pocket and felt the small piece of paper folded there. He had written and rewritten the words on that paper dozens of times. Some nights he would take it out and practice reading it aloud to his empty apartment. Other nights he would crumple it up and throw it away, only to fish it out of the trash can an hour later. The paper held words that could change everything. His best friend Marcus knocked on the door and entered without waiting for permission. Marcus had been his friend since they were 7 years old. They had played baseball together, gone to college together, and now Marcus was his best man. But even Marcus did not know what William was hiding. "You look terrible," Marcus said with a grin. "Are you having second thoughts about marrying the most beautiful woman in town?" William forced a smile. "No second thoughts about Sarah. She's perfect." Marcus studied his friend's face more carefully. "Then what's wrong? You look like you haven't slept in weeks." William wanted to tell him. The words sat right behind his teeth, ready to spill out. But he had made a decision 3 months ago to keep his secret until after the wedding. He did not want to ruin Sarah's special day with sad news. He did not want her to marry him out of pity. He wanted her to choose him with joy, not sorrow. "Just wedding nerves," William lied. "You know how it is." Marcus laughed and straightened William's tie. "Every groom gets nervous. But once you see Sarah walking down that aisle, everything else will disappear. Trust me." Through the basement window, William could see more cars arriving. Sarah's grandmother stepped carefully out of a blue sedan, wearing the same pearl necklace she had worn to her own wedding 60 years ago. Children ran around the parking lot in their Sunday clothes while their parents tried to keep them clean. Everyone looked so happy and excited. The church bells began to ring, calling everyone to take their seats. William's heart pounded harder with each chime. In just 30 minutes, Sarah would walk through those big wooden doors in her grandmother's wedding dress. She had shown him pictures of the dress, but he had not seen her in it yet. She wanted it to be a surprise. William touched the paper in his pocket one more time. Today he would become a husband. But first, he had to decide whether to keep carrying his secret alone or to share the weight with the woman he loved more than life itself. The choice felt impossible, but time was running out. The wedding was about to begin, and William was about to face the most important decision of his life. 3 months earlier, William had walked into Dr. Peterson's office thinking he was going to get medicine for his headaches. He had been forgetting small things lately: car keys, grocery lists, the name of his coworker's wife. Sarah had joked that he was getting old at 28, but the headaches worried him enough to see a doctor. Dr. Peterson was a kind man with gray hair and gentle eyes. He had been William's family doctor since William was a child. When William explained his symptoms, Dr. Peterson's face grew serious. He asked many questions. How long had the forgetfulness been happening? Did William ever get confused about where he was? Had anyone in his family ever had memory problems? The tests took 2 weeks. Blood tests, brain scans, memory tests where William had to remember lists of words and draw pictures from memory. Each test felt like a school exam he was afraid of failing. Sarah went with him to some appointments, holding his hand in the waiting room. She kept saying everything would be fine. Just stress from wedding planning, she said. But when Dr. Peterson called William back to his office alone, the news was not fine. The doctor's voice was soft and careful as he explained the test results. Early onset Alzheimer's disease. The words hit William like a punch to the stomach. He was only 28 years old. This disease was supposed to happen to old people, not to young men about to get married. Dr. Peterson explained that William's type of Alzheimer's was genetic. It ran in families, but William's parents had never told him about any family history of memory problems. Maybe they did not know. Maybe they had forgotten to mention a great uncle or distant relative who had similar troubles. The disease would progress slowly at first, then faster as years went by. "How long do I have?" William asked, his voice barely a whisper. "It's different for everyone," Dr. Peterson said. "Some people live normal lives for 5 or 10 years after diagnosis. Others decline more quickly. We'll monitor you closely and try medications that might slow the progression." William sat in his car in the hospital parking lot for 2 hours after that appointment. He watched people walking in and out of the building. Normal people with normal problems. People who would remember their children's names when they grew old. People who would remember their wedding anniversaries. People who would remember the faces of the people they loved. He thought about Sarah's excited planning for their wedding. The dress appointments, the cake tastings, the guest list arguments with her mother. She was so happy, so full of dreams about their future together. How could he tell her that their future might be shorter than they had imagined? How could he tell her that someday he might not remember her at all? That night, Sarah cooked his favorite dinner, spaghetti with meat sauce and garlic bread. She talked about the flowers for the wedding while they ate, white roses or pink roses. She could not decide. William nodded and smiled, but inside he felt like he was watching their life together through glass. Everything looked the same, but everything had changed. For 3 months, William carried this secret alone. He researched the disease online late at night when Sarah was sleeping. He read stories of other families dealing with early memory loss. Some stories were hopeful. Others were heartbreaking. All of them scared him. Now, standing in the church basement on his wedding day, William wondered if he had made the right choice in keeping quiet. The secret felt heavier than ever, pressing down on his chest, like a weight he could barely carry. In just minutes, he would promise to love Sarah forever. But what if forever was shorter than either of them expected? The church was full of people William had known his whole life. His third-grade teacher, Mrs. Johnson, sat in the 4th row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. His college roommate had flown in from California just for this day. Sarah's little cousins fidgeted in their fancy dresses, swinging their legs from the wooden pews. Father Martinez stood at the altar in his white robes, holding the thick wedding book. He had married dozens of couples in this same spot over the years. His voice was warm and familiar as he began the ceremony. William tried to focus on the words, but his heart was beating so loud he was sure everyone could hear it. Then the big wooden doors at the back of the church opened with a soft creak. Everyone turned to look. First came Sarah's little niece, scattering pink rose petals down the long aisle. She took tiny, careful steps, concentrating hard on not dropping the basket. Behind her walked Sarah's sister Emma in a soft blue dress, carrying a bouquet of white flowers. Finally, Sarah appeared in the doorway. William's breath caught in his throat. She looked like an angel in her grandmother's wedding dress. The dress was made of ivory silk with tiny buttons running up the back. A long veil flowed behind her like a cloud. Her father walked beside her, his chest puffed out with pride, but his eyes were wet with tears. As Sarah walked toward him, William felt the paper crinkle in his pocket. Every step she took made his secret feel heavier. She was so beautiful, so trusting, so full of joy. Her smile lit up the entire church. How could he start their marriage with such a big lie between them? The music played softly as Sarah reached the altar. Her father kissed her cheek and whispered something that made her laugh. Then he placed her hand in William's hand and stepped back. Sarah's fingers were soft and warm. She squeezed his hand and whispered, "You look handsome." Father Martinez smiled at the couple and began reading from his book. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of William and Sarah in holy matrimony." His voice echoed off the stone walls. "Marriage is a sacred bond, built on love, trust, and honesty between two people." The word honesty hit William like a slap. He looked at Sarah's trusting face and felt sick. She deserved to know the truth before she promised to spend her life with him. She deserved to make her choice with all the facts, not just the happy ones. Father Martinez continued with the traditional words, "If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." The church was completely silent. This was usually just a formality. No one ever spoke up during this part. It was just old tradition that no one really expected to use. But William's mouth opened before he could stop himself. "Wait," he said quietly. The word hung in the air like smoke. Sarah's eyes widened with confusion. Her grip on his hand tightened. The entire church went dead silent. Even the babies stopped making noise. "Wait," William said again, louder this time. Father Martinez looked surprised and a little worried. In 30 years of performing weddings, no groom had ever stopped his own ceremony at this moment. Sarah's face went pale. "William, what's wrong?" she whispered. William reached into his pocket with his free hand and pulled out the folded paper. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. 200 people stared at him, waiting to see what would happen next. The silence in the church was so complete that William could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. 200 faces stared at him with confusion and worry. Sarah's mother leaned forward in her seat, her mouth open in shock. His own mother clutched his father's arm, her knuckles white with tension. Sarah's eyes searched his face desperately. "William, you're scaring me," she whispered. "What's happening?" William unfolded the piece of paper with trembling fingers. The words he had written and rewritten dozens of times were there in his own handwriting. But now, standing in front of everyone he loved, the paper felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Sarah," he began, his voice cracking. "Everyone." He looked up at the congregation. "There's something I need to say before we go any further." Father Martinez stepped closer, concern written all over his face. "Son, are you all right? Do you need a moment?" "No," William said, shaking his head. "I need to do this now, before I lose my courage." He looked back at the paper, then at Sarah's beautiful face. "Sarah, I wrote this down because I was afraid I might forget the words when the time came to say them." Murmurs rippled through the church. People shifted in their seats. Sarah's grandmother sat forward, straining to hear better. Marcus stood frozen at William's side, not knowing whether to stop his friend or support him. William's voice grew stronger as he continued. 3 months ago, I went to see Dr. Peterson because I was having headaches and forgetting things. Small things at first, where I put my keys, what I had for lunch, names of people I've known for years. Sarah's face went from confused to worried. She reached up and touched his cheek. "William, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was scared," he said, tears starting to form in his eyes. "The test showed that I have something called early onset Alzheimer's disease. I'm only 28, but my brain is already starting to forget things. And it's going to get worse." A gasp went through the church like a wave. Sarah's mother covered her mouth with both hands. His own mother started crying openly. People began whispering to each other, trying to process what they had just heard. Sarah stared at him in shock. Her bouquet trembled in her free hand. "Alzheimer's," she repeated softly. "But you're so young. Are you sure?" "Dr. Peterson ran every test twice," William said. "There's no mistake. It's genetic. It runs in families, though no one ever told me about it before." He looked down at the paper again. "The doctors say I might have 5 good years, maybe 10 if I'm lucky. But eventually, I'll start forgetting bigger things, important things." The church had gone completely silent again. Even the children seemed to sense that something serious was happening. Father Martinez stood quietly, clearly unsure of what to do in this unprecedented situation. "I know this changes everything," William continued, his voice getting stronger despite the tears on his cheeks. "I know you didn't sign up for this when you agreed to marry me. I won't blame you if you want to walk away right now. No one would blame you." Sarah was crying now too, but she hadn't let go of his hand. If anything, she was holding on tighter. "But if you'll still have me," William said, "I want to make you promises that are different from the normal wedding vows. Promises that are honest about what our life together might really be like." He folded the paper and put it back in his pocket. These final words needed to come straight from his heart, not from something he had written down. "Sarah, I promise that even if someday I forget our wedding anniversary, I will love you. Even if I forget our first kiss, I will love you. Even if I forget how we met, I will love you. And even if someday I forget your name, my heart will remember the way you make me feel." By now, half the people in the church were crying openly. Sarah's tears were flowing freely, but she was smiling through them. William wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, but the tears kept coming. The entire church watched him with a mixture of heartbreak and admiration. He had never felt so vulnerable in his life, standing there with his deepest fear exposed for everyone to see. "I've been carrying this secret for 3 months," he continued, his voice steady despite his tears. "Every night I would lie awake wondering if I was being selfish, wondering if I should tell you and risk breaking your heart, or keep quiet and risk starting our marriage with a lie." Sarah still held his hand tightly. Her wedding dress sparkled in the colored light from the stained glass windows. Her veil moved slightly in the breeze from the open church doors. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale, but her eyes held the wisdom of someone much older. "I decided to tell you now because I realized something," William said. "I realized that love isn't just about the good times. Real love is about choosing each other even when things get hard, even when the future is scary and uncertain." His mother was crying so hard that his father had to put his arm around her shoulders. Sarah's father sat with his head in his hands, clearly struggling with this news about his future son-in-law. But William noticed that no one had gotten up to leave. Everyone was still there, still listening, still supporting them. "Sarah, I can't promise you 50 years of marriage like your grandparents had," William said, glancing at the elderly woman in the front row. "I can't promise that I'll remember our children's names when they're older. I can't promise that I'll be the husband you dreamed of when you were a little girl." Sarah made a soft sound, somewhere between a sob and a laugh. "William, stop," she whispered. But he pressed on. "What I can promise you is that every day I have left with a clear mind, I will love you with everything I have. I will write you letters while I still can, so you'll have my words forever. I will take 1,000,000 pictures with you so we can look at them together when my memory starts to fade." The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting rainbow patterns on the church walls. Children in the congregation had stopped fidgeting and were listening with the serious attention that children sometimes give to things they don't fully understand but know are important. "I promise to be honest with you about how I'm feeling and what I'm going through," William continued. "I promise to never hide my fears from you again. And I promise that even on the days when I don't remember being your husband, I will still be kind to you, because kindness lives deeper than memory." Father Martinez stepped forward slightly. He had performed hundreds of weddings, but he had never heard vows like these. His own eyes were wet as he watched this young couple navigate the most difficult conversation of their lives in front of their entire community. "I know that someday you might have to take care of me the way I should be taking care of you," William said. "I know you might have to remind me who you are and tell me our story over and over again. I know that's not fair, and I know it's not what you planned for." Sarah shook her head, more tears spilling down her cheeks. "William, please stop apologizing for being sick. But I also know that the love we have right now, in this moment, is real," he said. "It's strong enough to handle whatever comes next. At least I hope it is. I hope we are." He looked out at the congregation, at all the faces of people who loved them. His college friends who had driven hours to be there. Sarah's coworkers who had become like sisters to her. Neighbors who had watched them fall in love over the past 3 years. "I'm sorry for surprising everyone like this," he said to the crowd. "I know this isn't the happy wedding ceremony you came to see, but I couldn't promise to love Sarah forever without being honest about what forever might look like for us." The church was so quiet that he could hear birds singing outside. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. This wasn't how weddings were supposed to go, but somehow it felt more real and more meaningful than any traditional ceremony could have been. Sarah looked at William for a long moment without speaking. Her tears had stopped falling, but her eyes were still bright with emotion. The entire church held its breath, waiting to see what she would do. Some people probably expected her to run. Others might have thought she would faint or break down completely. But Sarah had always been stronger than she looked. She stepped closer to William, so close that her wedding dress brushed against his legs. With one hand she still held her bouquet of white roses. With the other, she reached up and gently wiped a tear from his cheek. "William James Morrison," she said, using his full name the way his mother did when he was in trouble as a child. But her voice was soft and full of love, not anger. "Do you really think a little thing like Alzheimer's disease is going to scare me away from marrying you?" A small laugh escaped from someone in the congregation. It might have been his sister. The sound broke some of the tension that had been building in the church. "I fell in love with your heart," Sarah continued, "not with your memory. I fell in love with the way you make me laugh when I'm sad, the way you leave little notes in my lunchbox, the way you cry during sad movies and pretend you don't. Those things come from who you are inside, not from what your brain can remember." William stared at her in amazement. This was not the response he had expected. He had prepared himself for her to be angry or scared or disappointed. He had not prepared himself for her to be so calm and sure. "Besides," Sarah said with a small smile, "my grandmother has been dealing with memory problems for 2 years now. Some days she thinks I'm her sister who died 20 years ago. Some days she doesn't recognize any of us. But do you know what she still remembers?" William shook his head. "She remembers that she is loved. Even when she can't remember our names or how we're related to her, she knows that the people around her care about her. Love lives deeper than memory, William. You were right about that." Sarah's grandmother nodded from her seat in the front row. She was 92 years old and had been married to Sarah's grandfather for 65 years before he passed away. If anyone understood love that lasted through difficult times, it was her. "3 months ago, when you got that diagnosis, you could have told me right away," Sarah said. "You could have let me help you carry this worry, but instead, you tried to protect me from being sad. That tells me everything I need to know about the kind of man you are." She looked out at the congregation, then back at William. "You want to know what I think about your promises. I think they're beautiful. But I want to make some promises too." Father Martinez stepped forward. "Would you like to continue with your own vows?" "Yes," Sarah said firmly. She handed her bouquet to her sister Emma and took both of William's hands in hers. "William, I promise that when you forget our anniversary, I'll remind you and we'll celebrate it again. When you forget our first kiss, I'll tell you the story and then kiss you like it's the first time all over again. When you forget how we met, I'll act it out for you until you're laughing so hard you cry." More people in the church were smiling now through their tears. The mood was shifting from sadness to something warmer and more hopeful. "I promise to be patient on the hard days and grateful for the good ones," Sarah continued. "I promise to take so many pictures and videos that our house will be full of memories, even if your mind can't hold them all. I promise to love you when you're confused, love you when you're scared, and love you when you don't remember that you're supposed to love me back." William was crying again, but these were different tears. These were tears of relief and gratitude and overwhelming love. "And I promise," Sarah said, her voice getting stronger, "that if we only get 5 good years together, Then we are going to make them the 5 most amazing years that any couple has ever had. We're going to pack a lifetime of love and laughter and adventure into whatever time we have." She smiled at him through her tears. "Now, can we please get married before I start crying so hard that I ruin my makeup completely?" Father Martinez wiped his own eyes with his sleeve. In 30 years of performing weddings, he had never experienced anything like this. The usual script he followed seemed too small and ordinary for what was happening between William and Sarah. He closed his wedding book and set it aside. "William and Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's clear that you have already spoken more meaningful vows than any I could read from a book. But if you'd like to make your promises official in the eyes of God and this community, we can continue." "Yes," they both said at the same time, then laughed at their timing. "Would you like to exchange rings?" Father Martinez asked. Marcus stepped forward with the rings, his own eyes red from crying. As William's best friend since childhood, he had never been more proud of anyone in his life. The way William had found the courage to tell the truth, and the way Sarah had responded with such grace, showed him what real love looked like. William took Sarah's ring first. It was a simple gold band that had belonged to her great-grandmother. As he slipped it onto her finger, he spoke without thinking about the words beforehand. "Sarah, with this ring I promise to love you with my whole heart for as long as my heart beats. I promise to be grateful for every day we have together, whether it's 5 years or 50. I promise to write down our story so you'll always have it, even when I can't remember it myself." Sarah's hands were shaking as she took William's ring. It was plain gold, just like hers, but she had secretly had the inside engraved with the date they first met and the words "always and forever." "William, with this ring I promise to be your memory when yours fails. I promise to tell you our love story every single day if I need to. I promise that even when you don't know who I am, I will know exactly who you are to me. You are my husband, my best friend, and the love of my life." The church was completely silent except for the sounds of people crying quietly. Even the children seemed to understand that they were witnessing something special. Sarah's little cousin, who was only 5 years old, whispered to her mother, "Why is everyone so sad but happy at the same time?" Father Martinez looked at the couple standing before him. They were so young to be facing such a difficult future, but they were facing it together with more courage than most people twice their age. "William and Sarah have chosen to speak their own vows from the heart," he said to the congregation. "But I would like to add one traditional element, if I may." He looked at them both. "The promises you make today are not just between the two of you. They are witnessed by God and by this community of people who love you." He turned to face the congregation. "Will all of you here today promise to support William and Sarah through whatever challenges they face? Will you promise to help them remember their love when times get difficult? Will you be their extended memory and their source of strength?" "We will," came the response from 200 voices. The sound was so strong and unified that it seemed to shake the church walls. "Then by the power vested in me, and in the presence of God and these witnesses, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Father Martinez smiled through his tears. "William, you may kiss your bride." William cupped Sarah's face in his hands and kissed her softly. It was not the passionate kiss of a movie romance. It was gentle and reverent, full of gratitude and promise. When they broke apart, Sarah whispered something that only he could hear. "What did she say?" Someone called out from the congregation. Sarah blushed and looked at William. He nodded, giving her permission to share. "I told him that even if he forgets this kiss someday, I'll remember it for both of us," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. The applause that followed was different from the usual wedding applause. It was deeper and more emotional. People were clapping not just for a new marriage, but for the courage and love they had just witnessed. As William and Sarah walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, their friends and family reached out to touch them, to offer congratulations and support. Everyone knew that this couple would face challenges that most newlyweds never have to think about. But everyone also knew that they had just witnessed the strongest foundation for a marriage that any of them had ever seen. The reception hall was decorated with twinkling lights and white flowers, but the atmosphere was different from a typical wedding celebration. Instead of the usual party mood, there was something deeper and more meaningful in the air. People gathered in small groups, talking quietly, and wiping away tears that kept coming even though the ceremony was over. William and Sarah stood near the entrance, greeting their guests as they arrived from the church. Every person who approached them had something special to say. These weren't the usual congratulations about looking beautiful or having a lovely ceremony. These were words from the heart. Mrs. Johnson, William's third-grade teacher, took his hands in her wrinkled ones. "William, dear, what you did today took more courage than anything I've ever seen. Your parents should be so proud of the man you've become." Sarah's college roommate, Jennifer, hugged them both tightly. "I've been to 15 weddings in the past 5 years," she said, "and I've never seen two people love each other the way you two do. What happened today was real. It was honest. It was beautiful." But the most surprising responses came from people who had their own stories to share. William's uncle Robert, a quiet man who rarely talked about personal things, approached them with tears in his eyes. "I need to tell you something," he said. "My father, your grandfather William, had Alzheimer's too. We never talked about it, because back then people didn't discuss things like that. But I watched my mother take care of him for 7 years, and their love only grew stronger. Don't let anyone tell you this disease defines your marriage. Love is stronger than any illness." Sarah's aunt Margaret, who had been divorced twice, surprised everyone by sharing her own story. "I left both my husbands when things got difficult," she admitted. "One had depression, the other had diabetes. I was too selfish and scared to handle the hard parts of marriage. What you two are doing, choosing each other even when you know it will be hard, that's what real marriage vows mean." As the evening went on, more people came forward with their own experiences. A family friend whose wife had multiple sclerosis, a coworker whose husband had survived cancer, Sarah's neighbor whose teenage son had a learning disability. Each person had learned something about love that went beyond the easy times. Marcus stood up to give his best man speech, but instead of the usual funny stories about the groom, he talked about friendship and loyalty. "I've known William since we were 7 years old," he said. "I've seen him be brave in little ways over the years, but today I saw him be brave in the biggest way possible. He showed all of us what it means to be honest, even when honesty is terrifying." He looked directly at William and Sarah. "And Sarah, what you said in that church today changed the way I think about love. You showed us that real love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about choosing to love someone completely, including their imperfections and their struggles." The speeches continued throughout the evening, but they weren't just speeches anymore. They were testimonials about love, commitment, and community support. People shared their own promises to help William and Sarah in the years ahead. Sarah's photography teacher from college stood up with tears streaming down her face. "I want to volunteer to help you document your life together," she said. "I'll come take pictures of you two every month for free, for as long as you want. We'll create the most beautiful photo albums anyone has ever seen." William's boss from the accounting firm where he worked made his own promise. "We're going to work together to make sure you can keep working for as long as possible. Flexible schedules, working from home when you need to, whatever it takes. You have a family at the office too." The local pastor from Sarah's childhood church, who wasn't even invited to the wedding originally, had heard about what happened and came to the reception. "I want to start a support group for young couples dealing with early onset illnesses," he announced. "You two shouldn't have to go through this alone. There are other people who need the kind of courage you've shown today." By the end of the evening, William and Sarah had a notebook full of phone numbers, email addresses, and specific offers of help. People wanted to cook meals, provide rides to doctor appointments, help with yard work, and just be there to listen when things got tough. The dancing was gentle and meaningful. When William and Sarah had their first dance as husband and wife, they swayed slowly to "The Way You Look Tonight." Halfway through the song, other couples joined them on the dance floor, and soon everyone was dancing together, creating a circle of love around the newlyweds. As the evening wound down, Sarah's grandmother approached them one more time. Despite her own memory problems, she had been lucid and present all day. "Let me tell you something about memory," she said in her soft, shaky voice. "The mind forgets facts and dates and names, but the heart remembers love. Always remember that." 6 months after the wedding, William and Sarah's story had spread far beyond their small town. A local newspaper reporter had been at the wedding as a guest and asked permission to write about what she had witnessed. The article was picked up by larger newspapers, then by magazines, and eventually by television news programs. But William and Sarah were not interested in fame. They were too busy living the life they had promised each other. Every morning, William woke up and wrote Sarah a short letter telling her how much he loved her. He kept copies of all the letters in a special box, creating a written record of their love that would last forever. They took Sarah's photography teacher up on her offer. Once a month, she came to their house and took pictures of them doing ordinary things, cooking breakfast together, reading books on the couch, working in their small garden, walking their new puppy. The photos were beautiful not because they were fancy, but because they captured real moments of happiness. Sarah had started a blog called Living with Love and Loss, where she wrote about their daily life. She shared the good days and the challenging ones with equal honesty. When William had his first episode of significant confusion 6 months after the wedding, Sarah wrote about how scary it was, but also about how they got through it together. "Yesterday, William forgot my name for about an hour," she wrote. "He knew he loved me, and he knew I was important to him. But he couldn't remember the word Sarah. Instead of panicking, we decided to play a game. He tried to guess my name by giving me clues about why he loved me. 'You're the one who makes the best pancakes,' he said. 'You're the one who laughs at my terrible jokes. You're the one who holds my hand during scary movies.' By the time he remembered my actual name, we were both laughing and crying at the same time." Thousands of people read Sarah's blog every week. Many of them were dealing with their own difficult situations. Some had family members with Alzheimer's or other memory diseases. Others were facing different kinds of illnesses or challenges. But all of them found hope in reading about a young couple who had chosen love over fear. The support group that the pastor had promised to start became a reality. It met every Tuesday evening in the church basement where William and Sarah had gotten ready for their wedding. Couples came from 3 different towns to attend. Some were dealing with Alzheimer's, others with cancer, depression, disability, or other challenges that tested their marriages. William and Sarah attended every meeting, not as experts or teachers, but as friends who understood what it felt like to love someone when the future was uncertain. They listened to other people's stories and shared their own experiences. The group became like an extended family. One evening, a young woman named Lisa came to the group with her husband, Mark. Mark had been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's disease at age 32. Lisa was angry and scared and convinced that their marriage was over before it had really begun. "I didn't sign up for this," she said through her tears. "We've only been married for 8 months. This isn't fair." Sarah reached across the circle and took Lisa's hand. "You're right," she said. "It's not fair. None of us signed up for the hard parts when we fell in love. We signed up for happiness and romance and growing old together peacefully. But here's what I learned on my wedding day. Love isn't about what we signed up for. Love is about what we choose to do when life doesn't go according to plan." 3 months later, Lisa and Mark renewed their wedding vows in the same church where William and Sarah had gotten married. This time, they spoke honestly about the challenges they would face together. The support group attended as their witnesses, and there wasn't a dry eye in the building. Stories like this became common. Couples who had been inspired by William and Sarah's example began making different choices about their own relationships. Instead of running away from difficulties, they ran toward each other. Instead of hiding their fears, they shared them. Instead of giving up when things got hard, they found new ways to love each other through the struggles. William's condition progressed slowly, just as the doctors had predicted. Some days were harder than others, but every morning he still woke up knowing that he was loved, and every evening he still fell asleep grateful for another day with Sarah. On their first wedding anniversary, they returned to the church where it all began. Father Martinez was there, along with many of the same people who had witnessed their original vows. This time, instead of making promises about the future, they celebrated the promises they had already kept. "A year ago, I was terrified of forgetting," William said to the gathered crowd. "Now I understand that the most important things can't be forgotten. They live in our hearts, in our community, and in the love we choose to give each other every single day." Their love story had become bigger than just their own marriage. It had become a reminder to everyone who heard it that real love is not about finding someone perfect to love. Real love is about choosing to love someone completely, especially when that choice requires courage, sacrifice, and faith in something stronger than memory itself.